Donald Trump caused a series of international panics after he picked new fights with multiple foreign countries not named China or Russia, and he also illegally purged a bunch of government watchdogs whose job it is to monitor corruption. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. Well, here we are. We're 1 week into Donald Trump's second term, and much like his first term, too much stuff is happening. You guys, and when you do a daily show about the stuff that happens, it can be a lot. Say what you want about Joe Biden, but I'm pretty sure by the time we taped at 4 in the afternoon, he was out cold. And that was nice. But with Trump, it's back to his trademark strategy of flooding the zone. Trump illegally fired over a dozen government watchdogs without notifying Congress, imposed a devastating freeze on the National Institutes of Health. His border czar conducted an ICE raid with Dr. Phil. He said Canada should become the 51st state and made these completely indecipherable comments about the wildfires in California.
The trees were okay because the trees are loaded with water. They sucked that water out of the ground. The trees, they were dark on the bottom, but they were absolutely living, and they lived because they're soaking wet. I said, look at this, the house is burned down and the tree is standing, and it's, other than being a little different color on the bottom, and it went through an inferno. It's amazing, it's soaking wet.
Stop saying the trees were soaking wet. Yes, trees absorb lots of water and have a higher combustion point than dry brush that is already dead. It's like saying people in the gym are in better shape than the ones in the graveyards. But that is just a basic scientific fact about how plants work that has no relevance to the wildfire response. I mean, what are you even suggesting to do with this wetness? You can't just put a faucet on the tree and say, boom, problem solved. We take a hose, hook it up to a tree, and it's like Typhoon Lagoon out here. Also, I never want to hear Donald Trump or anyone say the word soaking wet ever again. I said wetness a couple of sentences back, and I'm a little mad at myself. Sounds like a DJ doing a promo for a wet t-shirt contest for trees. Welcome back to our wet t-shirt contest here on Z109.9 The Wolf. We're coming to you live from New Jersey's Ramapo Mountain State Forest, where our next contestant is Willow, followed by Cherry. And then, of course, she's sweeter than syrup. That's right, it's Maple.
109.9 The Wolf.
Is it safe to move on? But that's not the dumbest thing Trump said about the wildfires in California, because he also said this.
I was talking to people from Austria, people from Finland, people that live in forests. And one of the gentlemen, one of the top great leaders of Austria said, we don't have forest fires, and we have trees that are actually far more flammable than they have in California, but they literally rake their forest. They take down, if a tree comes down, they take it down. They say you have 18 months. After that, it's like a matchstick. And I know environmentally, some environmental groups like the trees to just melt into the ground, but when they do melt into the ground, they become an inferno.
Yeah, there's too much to get to here, so we'll just have to ignore the fact that Trump thinks trees can melt into the ground. I think he saw that Salvador Dali painting, thought that was the news, but I want to understand what he means by people that live in forests, because, you know, Austria and Finland are major industrialized nations. Are you thinking of the Smurfs again? People, they live in little mushroom houses. They know how to manage the forest. You know, I was talking to the president of Finland. He had a red hat and a white beard, no shirt. And I thought that was very strange, because he was wearing pants and a hat, but no shirt. And how do you come to that conclusion? Trump has very bizarre fixations on certain foreign countries. Now, you might be saying, do you mean Russia and China? Because he promised to deal with them immediately once he was in office. I don't. Trump has not only extolled the virtues of the forest people who live in Finland and Austria, but he has also set off an international panic after a tense call with the Prime Minister of Denmark, in which he once again threatened to annex Greenland.
President Trump sounding like he's not backing down when it comes to his desire to buy Greenland. It comes after reports of a fiery call between Trump and the Denmark Prime Minister.
Denmark is in, quote, crisis mode after Trump continues to push for Greenland. The intent was very clear. They want it. The Danes are now in crisis mode, one official said of the call, while another said the Danes are utterly freaked out by this.
It's only been a week, and Trump has freaked out the entire nation of Denmark, a place that is often ranked as the happiest country in the world, known for cycling, furniture design, and Lego. And look, I'm not saying the Danes were high-fiving when Biden called, but at least it wasn't terror-inducing. It was probably just a long-ass story about Lego. Yeah, it's unbelievable what you guys are doing over there. You know? Entire Harry Potter towns, all the Ninjagos. You got them all. When I was growing up, we didn't have Ninjago. It was all Lincoln Logs. All you could do was cabins, you know. You made sure to dink your, you douse your logs with water because, wood won't burn when it's soaking wet. I'm not kidding around. But if you thought there was no way Trump could fit in another petty fight with foreign countries this weekend, you're wrong, because he also got into a war of words with the president of Colombia.
President Trump and Gustavo Petro, the president of Colombia, went head-to-head, trading barbs here over the weekend after Colombia said that they would deny the entry of planes from the U.S. carrying Colombian citizens that were being deported back to their home country. The president hitting back with a threat of what he called emergency tariffs to the tune of 25% that would spike to 50% after a week, as well as travel bans and visa sanctions on the Colombian government and its supporters.
President Petro responding on social media saying Colombia will impose reciprocal 50% tariffs on U.S. goods, telling Trump, "I resist you."
Late last night, the Trump administration backed off the trade threats after Colombia said it would accept deportation flights.
So Trump threatened a 50% tariff on Colombia. Colombia's president responded by saying, "I resist you," and even called Trump a white enslaver. But then they came to an agreement, and now it's all good. Trump's relationships with foreign leaders are like those couples who are constantly fighting in public, but then brag about how great the sex is. Were you just flirting with the waitress? You mean like how you flirt with your trainer? That's it, I'm leaving. Then I'm leaving too. Should we go back home? Fine by me. I still have the handcuffs. Great. The safe word is tariffs. And hey, I'm down for whatever gets you off, but you know who that kind of dynamic is traumatic for? Us, the kids. Hey, you probably heard mommy call daddy a white enslaver last night, but I want you to know we made up. You probably heard that too. Who wants pancakes? But fighting with Denmark and Colombia is not a sign of strength. It's a sign of weakness. During the campaign, Trump promised to take on China and Russia, but as soon as he took office, he forgot about them and started picking fights with smaller countries instead. Who's next? Good evening, my fellow Americans. Tonight, I must inform you, the United States has declared war on two of our biggest adversaries, Tuvalu and Liechtenstein. That's right, Liechtenstein, we're coming for your roasty, your hafalab, and your Koskanoffel. By the way, tonight's Closer Look is brought to you by Wikipedia. Wikipedia, it's where comedy writers go to learn 3 foods from weird countries. Why's the wolf guy? The point is, Trump would rather everyone focus on the mostly meaningless fights he's picking with small countries than on the blatant corruption going on in his administration, like his wildly unpopular pardons of violent insurrectionists or his illegal firings of government watchdogs.
President Trump on Friday night firing at least a dozen inspector generals. Those are the internal watchdogs who monitor federal agencies. Now, that's according to the Washington Post and the New York Times.
This purge likely violates a federal law that requires the White House to give Congress at least 30 days' notice before their removal.
Can you talk to us about the firing of the inspectors general? Why did you do that? Is it because it's a very common thing to do, and not all of them. Some people thought that some were unfair or some were not doing the job.
Some people thought that some were unfair or some were not doing the job. He can't even explain his own decisions without signing like he's doing a book report for a book he hasn't read. The giving tree, of course, is about a tree that gives, and what does it give? Well, it gives water because like all trees, it's, everyone say it with me, soaking wet. Yeah, we can say it. If the president says it, we can say it. The reality, of course, is that Trump is following through on his threat to purge anyone from the government who isn't fanatically loyal to the MAGA movement, and he's willing to abuse any power he can in order to carry out that purge. Even Republicans admitted the move was likely illegal while also confessing that they don't really care.
The law says that 30 days before a president fires an inspector general, which of course is an internal watchdog for government agencies, he must tell Congress, tell you why. That didn't happen.
Yeah.
He broke the law.
Yeah, I think, he should have done that. But the question is it okay for him to put people in place that he thinks can carry out his agenda? Yeah. He won the election. What do you expect him to do? Just leave everybody in place in Washington?
Yeah, he broke the law, but what do you expect him to do? He's a charismatic outlaw bandit who's on the run from the sheriff. We're going to rob a freight train together like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. You hear that, Meemaw? You finally drove me to a life of crime. What with all your soup slurping, you damn sea monster? Trump thinks he can project strength by picking fights with tiny countries while he fires anti-corruption watchdogs so he can rip you off. That's it. He and his cronies are enriching themselves at your expense, and they're so excited about it, they're
soaking wet.
Shame on all of us. Shame on every person here. I never do this, but when this is over, you all have to stay. This has been A Closer Look.